Hello and welcome to the Funkenstein Wrestling Roundup. This is Babs, and I hope everyone's having a great Tuesday. This is lucky episode 12, or we hope it's lucky episode 12. For the first time on the Funkenstein Wrestling Roundup, I am flying solo, which means I don't have an interview. It's just going to be me talking with you. So this is going to be something really cool. I haven't done this sort of thing since Chikara in 15 minutes or less. So it's going to be something a little cool for me, a little throwback, except back then I had written transcripts. Now I'm just kind of winging it. I have notes and definitely things I want to talk about, but just not necessarily a written kind of recorded format. So it's very cool to be live talking with you guys. So again, welcome to the Roundup. First, I want to thank Funkenstein Wrestling Superstore, our sponsors. I want to say happy birthday to Dan, because it is his birthday today and he's out celebrating. I also want to thank Damage 365 for allowing us to be part of the network. So like I said, no interview. So I just want to talk, with you about and converse and chat about, current events. I'm definitely going to keep this to about 15-20 minutes. I love that kind of, time limit. It allows you to talk about a lot of things, and it's something it's easy to listen to. You can listen to it in the car on the way to work, or if you have a snap, if you have 15-20 minutes after you're coming off of watching SmackDown or Raw or the Cruiserweight Classic or NXT or, whatever happens to be on. You can definitely check it out. It's something you can listen to on your way to different shows. And there are 2 big shows this weekend, which I'm going to mention a little bit later on. So it's something kind of portable. And I like that idea, making it accessible. So I'm hoping that everyone enjoys listening. And I definitely, want to hear from you guys, hear your thoughts about some of the things I talk about tonight. So you can definitely check me out. I'm on Twitter and I'm on Facebook under Babs Indie, and that's BABSINDIE. So just the Y, I-E. I'm an I-E person. I know that was a great debate at one point, whether you were a Y person or an I-E person. I'm an I-E person when it comes to indie. So definitely, I want to hear from you guys. I want to know what you think. So big news. This week, it was kind of a sad week. 2016 has been a really rough week in general in celebrity culture and celebrity deaths. From Alan Rickman, David Bowie, Prince, just so many. Those are 3 of the big ones. And then, of course, this week being Gene Wilder, which personally just devastated me because I was such a Willy Wonka fan as a kid and I loved that movie. It's just iconic to me. But also, we had unfortunately another death this week in professional wrestling, and that was Mr. Fuji. And Mr. Fuji, when I started watching, now this is 1992, he was really still a manager. Previously he had wrestled, he was a tag team champion. But at this point, he was an iconic manager. He had managed Demolition, Axe and Smash, and then eventually Crush. But Crush joined after he was gone from there. But Axe and Smash, who were the WWF Tag Team Champions. And then he went on to manage the Powers of Pain. And then from there, he was kind of gone for a little bit, and then he returned with Yokozuna, who eventually became WWF Champion. And so, he's from this time, these sort of, iconic managers, and I want to talk a little bit about that, but anytime someone dies in wrestling, I don't know why, it just evokes different emotions. Like, I can think about, when Owen Hart died, it was I was just utterly destroyed. I happened to be watching the pay-per-view, number 1, so it was and then thankfully I wasn't there. I don't know what I would have done if I was there. But, just being such a fan of his at that point, and watching him kind of rise, and it was just this horrible thing. So I remember being sad. I remember, because he was my favorites. Another one of my favorites who passed away was Mr. Perfect. And I remember when I heard the news, I remember being incredibly angry, because I remember he passed away of a heroin overdose. And I just remember being incredibly angry that something would happen like that. This guy with all this talent, who was just awesome to watch and who I just loved watching, would just do that to himself. It was just, I remember being angry. And then I remember, just recently when Dusty Rhodes passed, just being incredibly, happy for really awesome memories, getting to watch some of the older NWA stuff, which is just amazing, like him and Ric Flair and some of those classic promos, just amazing things. But still sad that he was gone because he was awesome. It was Dusty Rhodes. What are you going to say? He's one of those guys who kind of transcended companies, mostly being kind of associated with the NWA, but WWF, he was loved too. Him and Sapphire, and then he had that feud with Dusty, with $1 Million Man, which was super awesome. So again, it just kind of affects me, and I find as I get older, and maybe because I'm getting older, not saying I'm thinking about death all the time, but I think it just kind of affects me differently. I guess just because of my age, and it makes me a little more nostalgic. You know, I find myself saying, oh, I remember when so-and-so did this, or when this happened, or, oh yeah, I remember that guy, I remember when he did this, or I remember watching this. And you know, it was things that happened like 20 years ago, you know, and when I was watching it then, I never even thought about, wow, what will this be like in 20 years, you know? What will I think about this in 20 years? And now it's 20 years, and it's like, I'm kind of taken aback a little bit. I mean, some things still remain, like, iconic, and if I watch them, they still bring that kind of sense of like, kind of special, sort of magical, like, kind of restorative, in a sense. Like, if I watch, like, the May 17th, 1993 Raw, that was the Raw. A lot of you may remember that. That was the one where the 1-2-3 Kid finally got a win. He beat Razor Ramon. And then Marty Jannetty beat Shawn Michaels for the Intercontinental Championship. That was the May 17th Raw. I'll never forget. It was 2 days before my birthday. And it was like an awesome show. And, you know, and when I watch it now, even I still get excited when I'm watching it, just knowing these things are going to happen. And when they finally happen and unfold, it's just awesome still. But I never quite thought about, oh my God, 20 years, what am I going to be doing? And I find myself almost sounding like my dad, who's like, oh yeah, I remember when I was watching like Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair and all these old, you know, guys, and Bruno Sammartino, and I remember those guys, and now I'm sitting there going, yeah, I remember Owen Hart, and I remember watching Mr. Perfect, and I remember watching this, and I remember watching that, and, you know, especially around Hall of Fame time, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, and those were such great memories, you know, and it's amazing too, like, to look back at how wrestling has changed, you know, some very, very good ways, I think, and then some bad ways. But I think that all in all, change is good, because change means that wrestling is alive and that it's not stagnating or dying by standing still. It's moving and evolving. And that's whether you think it's an art form, whether you think it's a sport, or whether you think it's just entertainment. It's changing. And, you know, people watching it, they're thinking about it differently, they're seeing it differently, we're seeing different sort of thoughts, you know, happening. So regardless how you view it, wrestling is changing, and that's only a good thing. It's evolving. Not to make like an evolve pun there, but it's evolving. Or a Pokemon pun too, now I think about it. It is growing and it's changing. And, you know, and it seems like lately too, you know, we're in another transition period as far as wrestling goes, where we're seeing a change in philosophies or thoughts, you know, and I think it really does start with WWE. They used to call themselves the leader in sports entertainment, and I think in a lot of ways they still are, you know, and I think that TNA and a lot of the indies kind of respond to that and kind of follow that lead or take inspiration from that, and that's not a bad thing at all. And that's not a terrible thing. Matter of fact, it can be a very good thing. So, like, for example, one big change is if you're looking at, like, NXT and some of the new Japanese recruits that are coming in. So we're looking at Shinsuke Nakamura, Kota Ibushi, you know, Asuka, Kenta, you know, they're charismatic and they're treated differently than Japanese stars were treated in the past. So not only are they treated like with appropriate respect for like what they've done, their talents, you know, their status, you know, they're treated very seriously as serious superstars. You know, I remember the big news when Nakamura started or when Kenta got signed. That was such a big deal, and it was treated with proper respect. You know, and then you can contrast that. So this sort of next wave of Japanese wrestlers, contrast that with ways like Taka Michinoku, who is basically a legend and inspired many people, you know, was treated almost sort of more like a joke or something that wasn't taken seriously. Tajiri less so, although Tajiri came to us from ECW, and in ECW it wasn't like that. The Japanese competitors, the Mexican, they were all treated, it was treated very seriously. And he was treated very seriously there, but in WWE not so much. Or Sho Funaki. I mean, I love Funaki. I think he's hilarious. I think he's awesome. But it was almost like, okay, we don't take him seriously. Almost like he was a caricature. And it's true, even with Taka Michinoku and stuff like that. More of a caricature of something rather than a legit superstar. And so we're seeing that change of, hey, you know what? These guys, these Japanese guys are super good. I mean, they were good to start with. But, hey, you know what? They're just as good as the guys we have. They have just as much talent. They have just as much ability. Hey, wait a minute. Why are we treating them? Why should we treat them any differently? We should give them a spotlight. And it's really paying dividends, for them in terms of bringing in new fans, in terms of making things more exciting. We're seeing different matchups. I mean, really, I would like to see Nakamura against like anybody on the roster. Nakamura and AJ Styles, sure, put it on Raw. Put it on a pay-per-view. I'll watch it. I'd like to see how it's different, versus anything they would do in New Japan. Well, how it would be different in WWE. I'd like to see that version of it. Sure, absolutely. And I think that's just a good thing. Now we're getting to see people who really can show off what they can do, in terms of their talent. So now we're kind of moving away from caricatures, not necessarily characters, because there are certainly characters, and very charismatic and, like I said, very talented, but away from caricatures, where they become more stereotypes than anything else. And there's nothing wrong with stereotypes either. People can play into them and it works. But they're no longer caricatures. And I think that's just a good thing. That's, again, a good evolution in wrestling, where we can really enjoy it. And I'm looking forward to seeing, more Japanese wrestlers coming in. I know they just did their first Chinese signing of Ben Wang. I really liked Ho Ho Lun from the Cruiserweight Classic. I think he's adorable. I thought he was great. He was very, personable, very charismatic. He was easy to cheer for. You immediately, wanted to cheer for him. You just sort of liked him. I wasn't really familiar with him, and I just really wanted to cheer for him by the time it was done, and I was really into, what he was doing. And I really enjoyed it, and I really actually hope we see him again, because like I said, I really enjoyed watching him in the tournament. So again, sort of this thing where we respect the culture, we understand it's different, but we don't make fun of it anymore. We hey, let you guys do what you're good at. Be awesome, be superstars. So again, a good change. And even if you're looking now at championships, our WWE champion is Dean Ambrose. Jon Moxley he's been in death matches. He's a deathmatch guy, He was doing the hardcore stuff with death matches and things like that. Not saying that he can't wrestle. Obviously he can. And he hadn't before, and absolutely he was. He was in the Young Lions Cup in Chikara, and he had wrestled outside of deathmatch things. But so somebody that, in an area of wrestling that doesn't always get the proper respect, or the competitors don't get the proper respect, is now WWE champion. A few years ago, we wouldn't be saying that. We wouldn't even imagine that could happen. And so it's a nice change where we can say, different style, and Dean Ambrose is definitely adapted to the WWE. Again, showing that he does have real wrestling skill besides, deathmatch. Sort of just hitting people with things and a lot of deathmatch guys do, by the way. I always see that people underrate them. Really, friend of the show, Matt Tremont, totally another example of someone who has really good basic wrestling skills, very talented, very smart. He's a deathmatch guy too. And so I think that stigma is kind of falling away, and as it should, But Dean Ambrose is doing a great job as WWE champion. I'm enjoying watching him. And he's had some great matches, and, like I said, I'm enjoying it. And like I said, a few years ago, based on stereotypes and things like that, it wouldn't have happened. Or you're looking at the Universal Championship. I thought it was really great when Finn Balor won. I thought, all right, cool. I was really glad that he was up on Raw, so we can really see the Demon more, so we can really, because he's such a good, talented wrestler, and he's got this really great creative side, and a shame that he got hurt, and hopefully he'll be back soon, because I do enjoy watching him wrestling. But now Kevin Owens is the next Universal Champion. A few years ago, we wouldn't have said that. It's he looks too much like a guy who's sitting in the stands. And that's part of his appeal, by the way, is that he looks like somebody who's sitting in the stands. And that's not to discredit his talent, his ability, because he has it in spades, But the thing is, he doesn't look like everyone else, and that's what another great sort of evolving thing that we're seeing is that we're seeing that there's no longer the stereotypes that, wrestlers have to look a certain way. We're going back to sort of, and I think what made the 80s and the 90s great were that wrestlers were all different. So you had different types of wrestlers. So you had guys if we're talking big guys, we're talking the Natural Disasters. But to contrast with that, we had Money Incorporated, which was $1 Million Man and IRS, Mike Rotundo being more of a technical sort of mat wrestler, $1 Million Man going good, solid American wrestler with a really great gimmick. We had guys like Hulk Hogan, who are your muscle guys, Ultimate Warrior. But then you had Ric Flair was around, in the beginning of the 90s. You had guys like Mr. Perfect. You had Bret Hart, who was breaking out in the very beginning of the 90s, as a singles wrestler, a good basic technical wrestler. You had different